Hey scientists, it's time to gear up with those lab coats and get your goggles on. Today, we are going to explore how to record changes in the weather and use this information to make predictions about what the weather might be in the future. Let's get into it today by first looking at our essential questions that we're going to try and answer by the end of today's lesson. Now, let's talk about our essential question. Remember, essential questions in science and in different lessons can help us think about what we already know about a topic, and it helps us connect to new ideas that we're going to learn today to help us produce a new thought about the topic. Our essential questions will be focused on our different science topics. So look for keywords. In those keywords, the minute you see them and recognize them, I want you to think, what do I already know about this topic? Once you have that in your mind, you want to look at the question again to see what we're trying to answer today or what are we trying to answer about that topic. It's important to remember that an essential question is like a goal as well. By the end of our science lesson, you should confidently be able to answer the essential question. Let's go over our essential question for today. Our essential questions for today review these three specific things. Listen to me first. What tools can be used to gather weather information, and how should we record that data? Read that one with me. What tools can be used to gather weather information, and how should we record that data? Listen to the second one. Why do we record changes in weather? Say that one with me. Why do we record changes in weather? And our last essential question that we'll be focusing on in our lesson today is, how do we make predictions about weather changes? Read that one with me. How do we make predictions about weather changes? These are all the questions that we are focusing on for our first few days learning about weather, and specifically in today's lesson too. There's all different types of weather that happens and all different types of people that report on that weather. Look outside the window right now. What kind of weather do you see? There's lots of different ways to describe the weather we see outside, but there's actual ways to prove what we're seeing. We will explore and review the different tools today, and you guys will have time to become that own weather person. You will get a chance to explore with these tools and head outside to collect your observations on the current weather for today, tomorrow, and the following day. As you collect the weather over the next 3 days, you'll have practice using a rain gauge, an anemometer, and a windsock. All of these tools are used to help measure different kinds and types of weather. Now, before we get into what specifically you'll be doing today, we need to talk about those different tools and how to use them. Previously, you guys did your vocabulary activity where you had to go through and look at the different pictures. Rain gauge was one of the tools that you looked at. A rain gauge is a tool that collects how much rain has fallen at a certain location. Because it has this funnel or this little circle shape here, it's able to store or collect rainwater over time. When you're using a rain gauge to measure water, you have to look at a line specific at your rain gauge as it collects water through the rain, like you can see this rain gauge doing here. You can see that there's different ways to measure it. When you hold up the line, you want to look where the lowest line hits. So if we look here, the lowest point of the water is hitting the third line up. So that tells us that we got less than half an inch. We got 1, 2, 3. We got about a third of an inch of water here. So that's pretty good. So when you're measuring with your rain gauge, it's important to tilt the rain gauge and look at the lowest line of the water. We can see the highest line of the water is cutting off the 2 here, but we want to pay attention. Where does that lowest line hit? Sometimes this is hard to measure. So, with your groups and even with your teacher, if you're confused at where to look on your rain gauge, make sure you ask for help so you get the correct measurement. Today is called a thermometer. A thermometer is a tool used to tell us the temperature outside. Now, a thermometer has a long glass tube going over the top of this little red stuff inside. This red stuff is a liquid. As the air heats up, it also heats up this liquid in the glass tube, and the heated liquid will expand and rise. So it will rise according to the temperature. If it's hotter, it heats up more, and the temperature rises more. If it's colder, the line doesn't heat up as much, and it will be lower down on our thermostat. There are numbers next to the glass tube that tell you what temperature it is. So if I was going to read the temperature on this thermometer, it's at about 100 degrees. If you look, there are little lines between each of the numbers on your thermometer. If we look here, we have 0, there's a big line here, and then 20. On our thermometer, on our Fahrenheit side, on this example, these big lines represent tens. Even though this line isn't marked, it needs to be in between 0 and 20, and that number is 10. Between each of those is even smaller lines. Those smaller lines represent 2/10 of a degree. That will then bring us up to our 5 degrees if we or our 10 degrees when we count them all the way up. You guys will use your thermometer to check in Fahrenheit. In most other countries, people, when they check, they use Celsius, and scientists also measure temperatures in Celsius. But when we listen to the news, we always report our temperatures in Fahrenheit. Change throughout the day. When you get in school in the morning, you can check what the temperature is then. When you go outside for recess at some point, you can check when the temperature is then. And then when you leave at the end of the day, you can run by the thermometer and check what the temperature is then. The temperature is forever changing throughout the day. When I wake up in the morning, it's a little bit colder. And as the sun rises, it heats up, just like we talked about before. It heats up that liquid inside, and I start to warm up. On cloudier days, too, my thermometer doesn't get as high, and my hot and my red line doesn't rise as high. So that means I'm going to be a little bit colder. Temperature and thermometer definitely help me figure out what kind of clothes I'm going to be wearing. Tools are used by scientists to help show the direction and speed of the wind. These tools can also be called anemometers. These tools are attached to a pole and usually put somewhere high up. When the wind is not blowing, either the wind vane, the little circles on top, will not turn around, or your sock will not be blowing in the wind. You can also see on this wind vane, it has a specific pointer. This will point directionally to show us what direction the wind is blowing in. You can also see with wind socks which way the wind is blowing in according to which way the sock is blowing. It's important to check out the different types of winds because stronger winds will make our anemometer spin a lot faster. Although we won't be able to determine the direct speed or exact speed of the anemometer, we can definitely tell if it's going faster that we have higher speeds in our area. It's now going to be your time, scientist. Like we talked about early in this video, we are going to put our weatherman and weatherwoman jackets on, and we are going to help show the weather at our school for the next 3 days. For this activity, you will check a wind vane, a rain gauge, and a thermometer for 3 days straight and record different data on that information. Let's look where we're going to record our data. Record your observations in your Explore student journal. Since we are only doing this for 3 days, you can cross off days 4 and days 5. If you have time, you can allow your weather tools to sit outside over the weekend and check back in on them with Monday. For right now, though, we can cross out these 2 rows. You want to keep track of the outdoor temperature, precipitation, which means the rain, the wind direction, and weather condition for the next few days. How you will do this is you will record your information on the chart here. It's important to record the dates, what time you are going out to check the different temperatures, precipitation matters, and wind direction. When you're describing the daily conditions, that means look around, make observations using your senses. What do you feel? What do you see? Is the sun out or is it cloudy? Does it look like there's rain coming in, or does it look like it's just going to be a dark and gloomy day? You'll write your observations in the bigger boxes here. If you need more room at any time, you can flip your paper over and write on the backside. Just make sure you keep track of what day you are making your observations for. Your wind direction is important to know. Sometimes it's tricky to figure out which way your wind vane is pointing, if it's north, south, east, or west. Before you get into your activities today, make sure to spend time outside reviewing how to figure out what direction it's going based on the tools that you are going to use. You'll use your rain gauge to figure out your precipitation levels for the day. Remember, we talked about how to check your rain gauge. If you get confused or if your group is disagreeing on what measurement to exactly use, check in with your teacher to see which is the right measurement to go with. You're also going to record your temperature. Although we report mostly in Fahrenheit, it's important that we write down Celsius as well. We'll write both of these by looking at the sides of our thermometer, and wherever the red line lands, we'll write down the exact temperature. And you'll also make your predictions for tomorrow. As you make your predictions for tomorrow, you want to think about what you think the temperature will be, the precipitation, if there'll be wind. These are all important things to keep in consideration. How will you make these predictions? Look at the sky today and take some guesses about how the weather has been over the last couple weeks. We usually see patterns in weather. All right, scientists, it's time to get exploring. When you head outside, make sure you have your student journals and a pencil to record your information. You'll be going around in different groups to explore the different tools before coming back inside. Record your observations while you're outside and make sure to discuss as a group. You want to have the same notes down as your group mates do. Good luck, scientists, and I'll see you guys soon.